Sprunk. That's it. That's the whole video. We've said it before. Video games are expensive. They take years to make, and they're chock full of tiny, meticulous details designed to immerse the players. And so sometimes you spend all that time and budget carefully crafting the world, gameplay, and lore that you don't really want to sacrifice any of it for corporate branding and oversight. So instead you make your own brand. One that fits the subtle, satirical nature of your contemporary society. I mean, you've really stuck it to Sprite by naming your delicious citrus beverage Sprunk. Sometimes when you're making your fake world, it's nice to create every aspect of it to fit the tone you're going for. And so like The Simpsons, it's a good idea to just make up your own brands. It helps build a better, more real feeling world. Sometimes one that continues throughout an entire series. A connecting tissue through a franchise that's probably older than me. Fake brands are everywhere. And in the age of the ironic t-shirt, they add a little bit of iconography to your game while still being, subversive. What's funny about it is that oftentimes I have a preference in games to certain brands. Take the Borderlands series for example. I mean, first off, fuck Hyperion. They literally tried to kill me for like 2 whole games, and that's just bad PR. But also, TDR, pretty good. Like at first it starts out as just a random collection of kind of science fiction-y words on the side of the screen whenever you change guns. But you start to notice the quirks or the strengths they have over time. Sometimes you see more TDR than Jacobs, making the Jacobs feel, a little higher class, a little more luxury. Like, oh, it's only a Jacobs shotgun when it's from the Skag-Gully region of Pandora. Any other time and it's just a sparkling scattergun. Sorry. That was a terrible joke. It's kind of like real-world car brands. TDR, disposable as heck, but they get the job done. Hyperion, let's call it those kind of nicer Honda tuners with good pipes, and maybe a little more anime than you thought, but not enough to disappoint your parents. Torg, explosive, scary, like a used police cruiser that's held together with zip ties and good intentions. Slow and loud, but intimidating and effective at getting people the hell out of your way. But like over time, brand loyalty, or its opposite, kind of develop. As I've mentioned before, Matt Dakota and I have been playing Borderlands lately, and over time we've started to develop preferences. I typically don't mess with Torg. I've never been too impressed with them. The splash damage is nice, but they sacrifice speed. Dakota loves Hyperion, and Matt has a couple of favorites like Vladoff and Jacobs. And this very much extends to like Burnout as well. They're almost a satirical look, but not quite in how these car companies are portrayed. They have names like Nakamura and Hunter and have these cars that, while definitely designed to look real, also feel like they're designed to disregard things like fuel economy and driver comfort to just go fast. While there are trucks and vans and whatever the hell this is supposed to be in Burnout's roster, they firmly toe the line between realistic and kind of insane in a way that works so great for arcade racing. And as a result, these vehicles can be twisted and contorted in a way that wouldn't be acceptable in the eyes of General Motors, as it doesn't promote brand recognition or those top-of-the-line safety features that have recalls every time you take it to the shop. But like at the same time, we've talked about product placement and Burnout in the past. They've had real billboards with real companies like Gibson Guitars and the Obama campaigns next to highways full of fake cars. It's an interesting compromise, one that would be removed from that remastered Paradise release on the current generation. Any of the negatives that come from having real car brands don't exist in the same way as having real-world billboards. And those billboards are just virtual ad space. Like literally, I guess. The companies/campaigns are paying Criterion instead of Criterion having to discuss and license real-world cars. It gives them the creative freedom to create whatever world they want to create, again without having to sacrifice anything. And obviously the same thing happens in Grand Theft Auto. They don't need to appease corporate sponsors and can instead just absolutely stick it to Facebook. LOL. Life Invader? I thought this was supposed to be fiction. No, really, I do think that names like Cluckenbell and Pibwasser, while more closely tied to the 90s Mad Magazine attitude, do a good job to keep everything a little light in tone in the streets of Liberty City and San Andreas. I'm not sure if it's a better choice though. As Rockstar has matured, it seems to clash with the dramatic tale of an immigrant of America or an aging criminal. Like they're dark comedies for sure, and the crime films that influence them have their own versions of fake brands, but like Car Rides and Pulp Fiction would be so different if in the middle of the Royale with Cheese discussion, they kept getting a radio ad for babiesovernight.com.
You dig it the most.
Now a message from babiesovernight.com.
Like Big Kahuna is a dumb name, but definitely not any more dumb than Witch Witch. I get the whole idea is that they're supposed to be satirizing the American consumer's willingness to buy anything and everything, but couldn't it be a bit more subtle? I get that Nuka-Cola isn't any better at all, but Rockstar has some of the best writers in the industry right now, and maybe avoiding the low-hanging fruit would be better. Actually, on the other side of that argument, I frequently say radio ads are terrible every time I listen to them in real life, so maybe they're on the right track. I mean, none are worse than naming their FBI equivalent FIB, but that's not a company, so I'm not allowed to talk about it. Because of Saints Row's ability to take whatever GTA is doing and take it comically too far, the series is also bursting at the seams with painfully unsubtle jokes like mechanic shops named Rim Jobs. But what makes the Saints Row series worth talking about is its choice to turn the Saints into a brand, like the proto-social media influencers that existed when Saints Row 3 came out, and 2000s hip-hop artists turned fashion designers. The Saints is a serious brand, full of nice clothes, energy drinks, and oversized mascot helmets of Johnny Gat. And like, I can't blame anyone for buying one. I too one day long to be as cool as Johnny Gat.
Hell yeah. Who doesn't want to be Johnny Gat?
Regardless, it is a surprisingly interesting way to reflect on how we frequently worship, commodify, and some other third word symbols of anti-establishment and frankly criminals. And while I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, or that it's something that's limited to the modern air quotes gangster persona, I do think that it's taken to an extreme degree in the series by having loyal fans show up for autographs while you're committing crimes and having celebrities collaborate on bank robberies. Regardless, I'm not in the mood to unpack the ethical implications of all this because I just think it's fun, and I kind of love how everything is all purple and weird like the inside of a Twitch streamer's streaming cave. Right, so what if I'm not talking about like energy drinks, guns, cars, or websites where I can buy babies? What if I want to catch animals? Silphco from the Pokemon franchise have basically created the modern Pokemon tournament model with their production of the Pokeball technology and turned it into an industry. They have the Master Ball, a Pokeball that can catch any Pokemon without fail, yet they instead choose to only make one. Strange. And when a Pokeball is used, regardless of whether or not it's successful, it can't be used again. If Silphco are the inventors of this technology, it's likely they have little to no competition. And so they essentially created an industry that places small baseball stadiums in every town in the state that promotes tourism and encourages heavy use of this disposable tech. Why would they want Pokeballs that aren't designed to fail on occasion? They glitch out and don't catch that Pidgey on the first try because they want you to buy more. I mean, imagine the world without Silph. Towns populated by Pokemon and their owners hanging out together instead of being cooped up in tiny, shrinkable little capsules. Also, imagine if I bought a weapon, something non-lethal like a taser, and I get jumped by someone in an abandoned Sears parking lot, and I shoot them with that taser. And the taser decided if it would work based on an algorithm that includes whether or not the mugger is cold, if they've been attacked recently, and whether or not they're asleep. I would stop buying that goddamn taser if I survived. Imagine that, but the taser is being used by a 10-year-old against a live bear, and the 10-year-old wants to capture and train that bear to fight a ghost. That's Pokemon. Right, but what about like Abstergo from Assassin's Creed? While they're definitely a top secret front to an ancient order of Templars, they're also a public-facing company, but I'm not sure what they do exactly. Like, I've played most of the Assassin's Creed game and finished at least 6 or 7. I do, however, always check my phone during the future stuff, so maybe it's my fault, but I do know they pretty much do everything. In Black Flag, you're testing a game console version of the Animus technology, but like, they also do pharmaceuticals and much more. So much, in fact, that Desmond's mom, in a quote I found on the wiki and not in the actual game because I don't remember Desmond's mom being around, that says at any given point there are 3 dozen Abstergo-owned products in the average American household. That's intimidating. I know that in the real world, like 7 companies control all of the media you consume and that there isn't a lot of diversity outside of media either, but that's still a lot of products. And beyond probably Bayer, SC Johnson, or a food company like Nestle, it's kind of hard to imagine that these all would be under the same name. Like their logo is on all of their products. At least the real world scary monolithic companies have the common courtesy of obscuring it to quiet the feeling of having no choice. I was gonna have a section here that also mentioned Circa Arms from KOTOR and discuss its thinly veiled alliances with criminal organizations like the Exchange as a comparison to what Abstergo was doing. But as it turns out, the first appearance of Zerka was in an expansion for the West End role-playing game in 1990, which means that Zerka is not only older than the prequels, but also characters like Mara Jade, Thrawn, and Luke with 2 U's. But I'm not allowed to talk about it because role-playing games that aren't of the video variety are for nerds. I don't make the rules. Ugh, you say from the comment section. I can't believe you've once again skipped over talking about Resident Evil in a video that would be perfect for it. Look at me. This is me adding the Resident Evil collection to my GameStop cart because you're right, I do skip over Resident Evil way too often to consider myself someone who talks about video games with some authority. It's actually become my second favorite running joke after I haven't finished Red Dead Redemption 2. So I guess I'll finally get around to playing them and become the authority on the franchise, and by that I mean I'm gonna gently place it into my backlog until after I beat everything else, and then read the wiki article on whatever Resident Evil information I need in the future to pretend I didn't do that. Right, so in the meantime, I'm gonna ask you about Umbrella Corp. What do you think they do? Are they the ones who made the zombies? Did they sell the rights to Paul W.S. Anderson? Is it somehow related to the Netflix exclusive TV show based on the graphic novel by Gerard Way, Umbrella Academy, that I once read in the dark at 4 a.m. in the summer of 2018? Did they have something to do with John F. Kennedy's son, Leon, becoming a cop? Please comment down below your game theories about what you think Umbrella Corp does and help me finish this video. In the meantime, let's talk about Mario Kart. I like seeing the traditional world of Mario full of Goomba stomping and shell kicking adapted into the world of automotive racing. There's something really funny about it, and I know that they probably aren't canon, but it's hard not to picture Mario shilling for an oil company like that montage in Ricky Bobby. Someone pay Charles Martinet to say, "If you don't chew Big Red, then fuck you," on Cameo, please. Also, neither Aperture or Black Mesa seem like good places to work. I've actually worked for genetics and sciencey companies in the past, and they never are, but the fact that Aperture tests non-medical products on humans, and Black Mesa's HEV suit doesn't have goggles despite you clearly working with hazardous interdimensional materials makes me think that they are both in the middle of nowhere solely to avoid OSHA regulations. I know that large accidents happen at both of these places, but really, honestly, it was only a matter of time. And speaking of companies that just aren't doing science right, can Vault Tec just chill out for 5 minutes? Why are we experimenting on people when we are on the verge of extinction? What do you gain from that other than an army of Garys? I mean, the absolute audacity of a company to profit on an extreme tragedy, that's clearly fiction. Right. Beyond the technology companies like Vault Tec and Repcon, it's interesting to see all of these brands that balance atomic paranoia and the need for leisure. Things like sugar bombs and these cars with fins on the back feel reminiscent of the 1950s, which is necessary for retro sci-fi, but they paint a picture of a world positively obsessed with the very thing that would destroy them. Really, naming your mac and cheese company Blamco is like naming a beer Corona. Fuck, wait, no, that's an old one, come on. I get that pre-bomb Fallout is obsessed with atomic energy because it's their main source of power and they exist in a world that doesn't have microprocessors and transistors in the same way we do. But nonetheless, these names are the result of the probable negative that comes from the energy they use. It's an interesting way to paint the world, something that I think is so unique to Fallout. While Marcus in Borderlands may have taglines that relate to the Vault, his shop isn't called the treasure chest or something. The people of Fallout have essentially commodified Cold War paranoia and shown how single-minded they are. So right, why talk about these? They're fake companies. They aren't some real corporation invading video games to sell me cheap electronics and whoppers. But I think that's kind of what makes them interesting. When distilled down to brass tacks, the vast majority of these companies are antagonists, or at least a negative depiction of capitalism. Which may speak on the sample size I picked, but they were definitely also the ones I remember the most. That comes to mind when I think of fake companies and games. So often we talk about should games be political or not, but it's kind of in their DNA, an integral part to what makes Fallout, Grand Theft Auto, and probably Resident Evil so pointed. Even in a time when Ubisoft has all but avoided any sort of political stance that's worth making, they still recognize how easy it is for monolithic companies to be fronts for evil, even if they lack the self-awareness to realize that they might be one. And even when they're not doing that, they give developers an opportunity to develop an identity that's solely grounded in the environment they created, and flesh out a world that feels real and unique to the game, without taking the consumer out of the moment by having real-world brands to remind them of the outside world. Which, while that exists in television and movies, it's still a cool thing that games can simulate in their own unique way. But for the sake of ending strong, I'm gonna do a rapid-fire round where we count down the top 5 fake brands of video games that I forgot to put in anywhere else. Number 5, Ryan's Industries. It's a damn good time. Adam, good time. Coulda wrote that joke. I'm not, proud of it. Ryan's influence obviously is strung throughout the first 2 games, and it does a good job at illustrating the dangers of unregulated capitalism more than probably any other game, but it's also really obvious, so sorry I forgot about it. Number 4, Jill Sandwich in Dead Rising. I really get this joke. Number 3, Sunset Sarsaparilla. mostly because there's a local soda shop near me and they have sarsaparilla and it's pretty good. And because it's one of the only brands in the Fallout franchise to not have like some tenuous connection to the imminent atomic destruction that defines the series, which is always a positive. Number 2, Rupture Farms, because like Soylent Green, it's people, or not technically people. Number 1, Crazy Cat, because while these guys may invade local tourist destinations to sell local goods to tourists, I can't imagine them killing anyone. I know a low bar, but worth rewarding apparently. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below what you think the best fake brands are, and maybe let me know which ones I missed.